Boys and girls, originally a member of the Top Rod Bassmasters, the pride of Philadelphia, the 2003 Bassmaster Classic champion, 2006 Toyota Bassmaster Angler of the Year. He grew up in Philly and resides in Pittsgrove, New Jersey. Go Ikes for Mike Iaconelli! Get side by side, ladies and gentlemen. Can this dream come true? Starting the day with 37 pounds even. 5 fish. He's 2 pounds, 15 ounces. 10 pounds, 14 ounces. Childhood dreams come true.
Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop with a brand new episode for you today. And in today's shop, we're going to start a brand new series on baits and lures that help me win tournaments. Tournament winning lures. And to start this new series, I couldn't think of a better tournament than my win on the Delaware River at the Bassmaster Elite in 2014. You know, winning an elite tournament is really tough, but to do it on the tidal Delaware River, my home fishery, in front of friends and family and peers, it was a really special win for me. So I'm here today to talk to you about the main lure that I used to win the Delaware River. You know, in that tournament, it was an August event on the tidal Delaware. August is a tough time to fish. And remember, the Delaware has a tidal change of 6 to 8 feet. So 6 to 8 feet, twice a day, that river goes up and down and up and down. And in the month of August, there's really two things going on. There's a creek pattern and there's a main river pattern. But for both of those patterns, there was one thing that stood out, and that was current. Current was so important because think about the water in the month of August. It's hot and the fish have to eat a lot. So current provides a little cool water. It provides oxygen, but the most important thing it provides is a feeding station for those fish. In the Delaware River tournament, I used 4 lures, but one outproduced all of them. I used a pit boss, caught a lot of fish on a pit boss. I caught 1 keeper on a chatterbait. I caught 1 on a spinnerbait. I caught 2 on a shaky head. But the vast majority of the fish that I weighed in that tournament came on a jig, on a compact jig, a small profile jig. I used a 1/2 ounce brown and purple missile mini flip jig. And I purposely left it in the pack to kind of show you this jig and to show you some of the modifications I make to it in that tournament or anytime. All right, so when we look at the missile mini flip, it's a smaller jig than a normal profile jig. When the forage is small or the tournament is going to be tough, if the fishing's tough, having something that's a little more compact makes a lot of sense. So that was one reason I used that little 1/2 ounce mini flip. The other one was the way that it would fall in the water. And think about it, right? In this tournament, I was fishing current break areas that were mainly hard cover targets. Pilings, docks, bridges, barges, hard objects that broke the current. These objects were in creeks and these objects were in the main river. And I needed that jig to fall in place very quickly, rapidly, to get down to where the fish were and to help create a reaction strike. So the small profile is good because when the fishing's tough, it's good. When the forage is good, when the forage is small, it's good. But when you want that jig to get down and through something really quick, the smaller the profile, the quicker it falls, right? So it's another reason I picked that jig. You know, brown and purple really has become a key color for me over the years because I really feel like a brown-purple jig imitates multiple forage types. And in the Delaware in the month of August, they're eating a lot of stuff. But two of the main things they're eating are little bluegill and little crawfish. And when you look at that brown-purple, it really could be either one of those two forage types. So great color match to what they were really eating. All right, let's get to the modifications that I made with this jig. And I do this to a lot of my jigs, but for the mini flip in the Delaware River tournament, this was key. And the first thing I did is I trimmed my skirt just a little bit to make that profile even smaller and to let that trailer have better action. I'm going to get to that in a second. But basically, I'm going to get my scissors and I'm going to cut, let's call it about 1/8 of an inch, somewhere between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch off the bottom of that skirt. I really want that skirt just below the hook itself, okay? Just a little bit below the hook. The next thing that I'm going to do, and I love to do this to get a better hookup ratio, is I want to trim the length and the thickness of that guard. On the Missile Mini Flip, they use a 30-strand fiber guard, but I like to thin it out, and I like to trim the length. So the first thing I did, and I do, is I get the length of that, and I want to trim it back so that the guard meets the point of the hook. So I just trim that back. I start long and just keep going until I get it just about even with the point of that hook, okay? That's the length. The next thing I do is I want to trim out about 30% of the guard. So I move the guard with my fingers left and right. I use my finger and my thumb and my index finger. And then it doesn't have to be an exact science. I just grab about 30% of that fiber guard from the top. I separate it from the main guard, and I trim it all the way back. So now I've cut some thickness out of the guard. So those two modifications do not affect the way it fishes through the cover, and it'll help increase your hookup percentage. All right, so that was the jig, and then the trailer was just as important. And because it was August, I wanted a trailer that had a lot of action, and I chose the Baby Chigger Crawl by Berkley. I wanted to match the color, so I went with green pumpkin. And, you know, when you look at that small Chigger Crawl, this isn't the 4-inch, this is the 3-inch version, green pumpkin. It's a smaller profile that's going to fit that jig really well. So, green pumpkin 3-inch Chigger Crawl out of the pack. The arms are connected, so I break those little legs away. And then when you look at the body, it's got segments. And even though that's already a small crawl, I take and I cut off the top segment. So just the first little top segment of that bait, I cut it off to make that profile even smaller. That way, when I thread the 3-inch Chigger Crawl on that mini flip, and wait till you see how nice this marries up to this. Now I've got this really little, compact, brown and purple, green pumpkin crawl jig. Looks like a little crawfish. Looks like a little bluegill. And that was really my key bait. You heard me talk about that fast fall. So I was targeting any of those hard objects that broke the current. And listen to me when I tell you this. You ready? 85% of my bites happened on the initial fall. So knowing that, you know, I just wanted that rapid fall next to that cover. And when that chigger crawl was falling, and it was falling fast next to the piling or the barge or the dock, 85% of the time, they would eat it on the fall. You know, the other thing I was doing is I was throwing this to those hard current breaks on the lowest water available. And that means running the tide a little bit. So I would look at my tide chart and I would try to be in an area of the river that gave me the lowest water. And tidal rivers, fish are conditioned to feed on low water. You can catch them on mid-tide, you can catch them on high tide, but they're really biting and feeding on low water. So, you know, combination of fishing that jig on hard cover current breaks, creeks and main river, around the low water was real important. I would put it next to a piling, I'd let it fall. 85% of the time, if it was there, he'd hit it on the fall. If not, I'd hop it once, I'd hop it twice, then I'd move on. You know, in that event, that combination of that jig, hard cover current breaks, and hitting a lot of spots, really, running and gunning, was so important to that win. If you go back and look at the footage, you'll see me fishing a lot of places. I think I counted, and the second, third, and fourth day, I was hitting 50 to 60 spots in an 8-hour day. That's a lot of running. But every spot was the same. Hard target, broke the current, flip that jig in there, hop once, hop twice, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. And that's really summertime fishing on tidal water, okay? So jig, half-ounce missile, mini flip, chigger crawl, key. Real quick about tackle, I kept that one rod in my hand a lot in the tournament, and I fished it on my signature jig rod, which is an Abu Garcia Ikes series, 7.2 medium heavy. Gave me enough backbone to get those fish out of the cover. At the time, I was using Revo MGX Extreme. To go back and look at the footage, I love this reel because it's very palmable, has a fast gear ratio. And last but not least was, I fished it on straight fluorocarbon. You know, a lot of guys said, why straight fluorocarbon? And I used 17 or 20-pound fluorocarbon, depending on the cover. A lot of 17-pound Berkeley 100% fluorocarbon. And the reason I use fluorocarbon and not braid is because straight fluoros is dense. And when I pitched that jig to that target, it allowed it to sink quick and it allowed it to fish through the current naturally. You know, if I pitch that jig on braid, even braid to a fluoro leader, it parachutes a little bit. It catches the water. Braid floats. So it was less of a natural presentation. So straight fluorocarbon to allow that jig to fall quick and flow naturally in the current. Man, one of the biggest wins of my career, winning on the Delaware River at home, winning an elite event, really hard to do. Caught him on that jig really good, and that was a special win and a special bait. I hope you enjoyed this week's shop. We're talking about tournament winning baits from my career. The Delaware River was one of the best, and that was the lure that got it done. If you like what you're seeing in these shop videos, do me a favor, mash that button down there. Hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to my channel. If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help educate and hopefully help you become a better angler. See you later. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these two, and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.